This is the Retro XP Podcast, a podcast dedicated to retro video games from the first and second generation with the Odyssey, Atari 2600, and a television, all the way up to Generation 7 with the Xbox 360, PS3, and Wii. On today's episode, I'll officially be unveiling my top 10 favorite video games of all time. The only caveat with this list is that the top 10 of these games on my list have to be at least 15 years old. One game on this list really cuts it close, like down to the wire. So nothing newer than 2010 in this episode, which if I were to make an overall top 10 that included newer games, this list would obviously be much different. Anyway, I'll talk about my overall top 10 and talk a little bit about why it's on my list. So stay tuned for future episodes when I plan on going into deeper dives into those games. So let's get started. Retro XP is now part of the Hair of the Dogcast network, joining the likes of Raw Dogs, Zombie Dogs, Elden Dogs, and of course the flagship Hair of the Dogcast podcasts. You'll most likely find me a few of those podcasts, most notably Zombie Dogs, where all we talk about is the Resident Evil series. The network has tons of bonus content and episodes on Patreon at patreon.com/Hair of the Dogcast, so help support us by donating and not only getting access to those early episodes and Patreon exclusive episodes, but also access to the Discord community exclusive for Patreon members with a minimum of $3 a month. There is a room exclusive to Retro XP in there where we talk about retro video games and episode discussions. I'll also share some of your comments on future episodes as well, so be sure to chime in. I may talk about you. So if you listen to one of my last episodes about the Halo franchise, I shared a lot of comments and a lot of stories that you guys had with the Halo series. So it was a really interesting episode to record and sharing memories of video games with other people where it was pretty cool. I really enjoyed that. Otherwise, you can follow me on X, Threads, and Instagram at RetroXPodcast. Whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on, be sure to follow and enable notifications so you can find out when I drop a new episode. Episodes are also live on YouTube, and follow me there as well at RetroXPodcast. Now, as I've said before, the caveat to this list is that the games have to be over 15 years old, keeping in line with what, the retro gaming scene. Now, retro gaming is subjective to a lot of people. It really depends. It really depends on how old you are. For 30-year-olds, 15-year-old games can be considered retro. For 40-year-olds, 20, 25, 30-year-old games can be considered retro, and anything after that really isn't. So I don't want to get into the argument or like the overall discussion on what is really considered retro, but I think retro is subjective for everybody. This list isn't in any particular order. However, I think I'm pretty confident in what my favorite game of all time is, but I'll reveal that on a later episode when I go into a deep dive on that particular game. So first game on this list will be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Hyperstone Heist for the Sega Genesis. This game came out in 1992 alongside Turtles in Time for the arcade and SNES. Growing up, I was a Sega kid primarily, and while I did play both titles, I very much enjoyed the Ninja Turtles games when I was growing up. Even to this day, there's the Cowabunga Collection and Shredder's Revenge. I enjoy those games immensely. I thoroughly enjoyed Hyperstone Heist much better, however, than all of the games at that time. The game revolves around the Turtles needing to save Manhattan from the Shredder, of course. He uses something called the Hyperstone to shrink down the Statue of Liberty. Your adventures involve hitting the streets, going into the sewers, hopping on a pirate ship, a ghost pirate ship, I should say, a dojo filled with traps, and eventually hitting the Technodrome to stop Shredder and Krang. I like this game primarily because of the bright and sharp colors, and you can actually change the color of the turtles, which was kind of cool. You could change it to be like a darker comic book tone, and then like an anime, TV show color where it's like a little bit brighter. So I always liked the comic book color. It looked a little bit more grounded. Like I said, I like the sharp colors and graphics the Sega was bringing. The music was really high energy. The gameplay I felt was a lot more fun than Turtles in Time. which I know is considered a travesty to some, to say that out loud. I love the arcade game too. I loved it. Playing it in the arcades. Anytime I saw it, I was hooked. I was like, I'm going there. I don't care if I'm playing by myself or I'm playing with other people. Hyperstone Heist was a fun entry in the series and a game you could knock out in just over an hour. It's a relatively short game, and if you're interested, I always pick Raphael. Raphael's been my favorite Ninja Turtle, and if you know me personally, that shouldn't be a surprise, knowing who the type of person or the type of turtle Raphael is. Next game on this list is Resident Evil 2 for the PlayStation. The game came out in 1998 when I was a junior in high school. I was a huge fan of the first Resident Evil, and I was reading magazines after the first game. I had played the first game. I was reading magazines like crazy for any news of this impending sequel. And if you remember the history of it, it had gone through many revisions over the short development cycle. There's going to be a Zombie Dogs episode that should be popping up either now or pretty soon, where we talk a little bit about the development cycle of having to have changed the game type a couple times. One major, change in particular, but what they ended up with was nothing short of a masterpiece to me. The game stars Leon Kennedy and Claire Redfield. Leon's cop showing up for his first day on the force in the zombie-invested town of Raccoon City, and Claire Redfield, the sister of the first game's main protagonist, Chris Redfield, both meeting up at the beginning of the game to try to find out what's going on and, of course, trying to escape at the same time. The game was genius in that the two characters played two separate campaigns, finding different characters and, events throughout. And when you beat both of them, you get new alternate campaigns unlocked that changed much of the gameplay and arguably made things a little bit more challenging. Items were in different places. Things that you found on your first playthrough with that character you don't find on your second playthrough. A couple different puzzles too, and even like harder enemies. I loved this game for that because it was more than double the length of the previous game. It was much larger because it was in a whole city, and the stakes were higher due to the continuing shady goings-on with the Umbrella Corporation, who is a pharmaceutical company hell-bent on developing and weaponizing viruses that turn ordinary humans and animals into zombies and monsters. While there were many Resident Evil games to have come out since. I mean, the series has been going strong for 30 years at this point. I think they're going to be going on with their 30th anniversary next year. Yeah, that's crazy. Or maybe it was this year. I forget. I can't remember. But they were, like I said, there have been a ton of different Resident Evil games, some good, some bad. Even a full-on remake of Resident Evil 2 is included in this. This original Resident Evil 2 still is my favorite Resident Evil game in the series. I have to now talk about Super Metroid. This game came out in 1994 and blew my freaking mind. I had played and beat the first one on the NES before. It was pretty challenging. I needed a guide almost. I think even when I was a kid, I was like, Game Genie. I was a kid. Don't blame me. Don't knock me. And of course, I cut my teeth a little bit on Samus Returns for the Game Boy. I think I borrowed that from a friend of mine, and I really wasn't that interested. But Super Metroid shook the doors off with its. It had like a pretty mature storyline, really, really some good symphonic music, creepy horror-like atmosphere, and I would argue this game basically started what we now know as the Metroidvania style gameplay. Obviously, the open world map was the Metroid style that Castlevania ended up kind of doing similar with Symphony of the Night later on, but we wouldn't see that for I think another couple years after this. The game takes place on the planet Zebes, which is a derelict planet that has you chasing after Ridley, who's an alien monster hell-bent on capturing one of the last remaining Metroids and weaponizing it for his own use. Spoiler alert, Samus is a female. Samus prowls the planet in pursuit, unlocking new abilities, weapons, and even subtle story beats that you had to read the manual to understand. Like there was one place in particular where there was like a derelict alien spaceship that had crash landed on this planet. and you're going through the derelict spaceship to get a certain ability, and then you have to fight these like alien ghost monsters. It was wild. That was a wild level. uh I was I mean, at this time, I wasn't the one to dedicate a lot of time in video games. I wanted to get in and get out. I was more interested in like short form games that really didn't take a long time to beat, but I couldn't really get out of this world. I had to finish it. I had to play it all the way through. Thank God for saves. Video games weren't really known to create this kind of atmosphere at the time, and Nintendo was beginning its move away from being like this kid-friendly system that only babies play to having like mature games that even adults could enjoy. While I was a 13-year-old kid when this game came out, I was still blown away nonetheless. I was like, this is a really mature, mature game. That same year, we got Illusion of Gaia for the SNES as well. I was hooked by pictures and magazine articles when I started to see images of actual ancient historical sites. I was a history buff as a kid, so when I saw a game that had you go to locations like the Great Pyramid of Giza, Easter Islands of Mu, Angkor Wat, and others, I was pretty intrigued. It was so cool because I was like, as a kid, like, I'm never going to see these places in real life. So um it was an action RPG, the type of game I really wasn't interested in at the time. I was interested in more like fast paced action games, but maybe I could be convinced. What I found was an action fantasy filled with very likable characters, a high stakes storyline, and graphics and music that were both atmospheric and epic in scale. I never thought, but before this or even at this time, I never thought I'd fall hard for the characters in this game. And this was the first game where I really resonated with the characters, and everybody had personality. Everybody had these little quips or these personality traits that it's like you either loved or hate, but it was kind of like this ragtag team of like kids, these like teenagers that were like, out to save the world. It was pretty cool. There was, if there's one emotional scene in particular that made me cry. Something at the time which no game had ever done to me up until this point. I was like, why am I emotional with this? Why am I crying? This is a video game. The levels were large, sprawling, and you got to level up in each little stage that you enter automatically as you fought your way through these ancient sites to stop this world-ending calamity. It was like, you were able to like increase your HP or increase your attack, kind of not randomly, but like it would pop up after you clear an area. Like all these games in the list, I revisit it routinely, and I still get that same wonder when I progress through the levels. And I even learned about new ancient sites I never knew about at this time, prompting me to do my own research outside the game, which was kind of cool because I was like, hey, wow, I never heard of that place before. So there's going to be a lot of twos in this top list, and I don't know what it is really about sequels, like direct sequels, but those types of games really knocked it out of the park for me. And of course, I'm going to talk about Streets of Rage 2, which came out for the Sega Genesis in 1992, which after playing it at a friend's house, I immediately asked for the system for my birthday. I didn't want to be that kid that just came over to your house just to play your video games. I hated doing that. And of course my parents hated it too because, they saw what I was trying to do. Conveniently enough, actually, for my birthday, I got the Fighting Bundle, which had Streets of Rage 2 packed in with the system. So that was really, really convenient. The game was pretty damn violent for my 11-year-old brain to wrap my head around. As I'm pile driving dudes on the street with Max, I'm giving like this haymaker move with Axel, doing that cool backflip with Blaze, and skating around like an idiot with Skate. I didn't like Skate as much. I get why he was there, because he was Adam's brother, and Adam was kidnapped in this second game. But it was like, okay, fine, what an addition. He wasn't as strong. I think that was really the reason why. The music by Yuzo Koshiro still stands out as one of the most iconic video game soundtracks of all time, and even to this day, it still hits hard when you listen to it. It really does. The gameplay was smooth. You felt powerful as you made your way through the streets, and even through the final two levels. Even though those final two levels really dialed up the difficulty, I mean, it was pretty. I hate when games do that, where it's like the first half is like, oh, you're having fun with it, and then all of a sudden the difficulty ramps up like that, like really hard. I didn't mind it much actually because I was having so much fun on the way there. Like I would like play the game and I wouldn't really beat it, and I'd be like, I had fun. The beat 'em up genre was really reigning king at this time with games like this and Final Fight, but to me, Streets of Rage 2 will always be my favorite out of all the ones in this genre at the time. Halfway done. And this is going to be a short episode, actually. Probably one of my shortest ones. Maybe, but we'll see. We got to talk about Mass Effect 2, keeping up with the sequel thing. This game came out in 2010, just narrowly making my list. And this came out for the 360, and I think eventually for the PS3. I don't think it came out right away for the PS3. I enjoyed Mass Effect 1 a lot. It was a good space opera, quote-unquote space opera, with pretty damn likable characters, cinematic storyline with high stakes, and choices that mattered depending on how you played and how you treated those around you. Mass Effect 2 took everything the first one did and improved it all, every bit of it, tenfold. Better graphics, more action-packed combat system, a great storyline, a really good storyline. Even like that opening sequence, the first like 10 minutes of the game, it's like, holy crap. Like, didn't think a game would go there. And the return and introduction of some of the series' most iconic characters, and I would even argue in video games, period. Not to mention more choices that mattered and, mattered way more than the first game, especially when it came to the final mission. You had to take care of your team. And of course, in the final mission, they will take care of you so long as you use them appropriately. You cared about your team, your characters, and the people around you that you were trying to save. I mean, the jump in quality from 1 to 2 was so massive that it really could be its own standalone game, almost to the point where, if people ask me like, hey, should I start at 1? Should I start at 2? I hear good things about 2. Sometimes I say, yeah, you could start at 2. I mean, you could, but I would say not really, because you miss a lot of key story beats in the second one that just really wouldn't make sense. And certain relationships with certain characters, you're just like, oh, I wish I had more context with that. But it still stands out as a really good self-contained game. And man, I can't wait till I talk about this game in a future episode. Mega Man 2. While I played the first one before this, obviously, I didn't like it much since it was pretty difficult for my young self. I was like, man, this game's actually kind of hard. It looks cool. And I had my fun with it, but whatever. And then when 2 came out 1 year later, my 8-year-old self was hooked. I got an NES, not really for Mario, but for Mega Man. I replayed this game so many times, almost to this day, I can almost play it in my sleep. It had some pretty iconic action platforming, epic boss battles, the most catchiest soundtrack that I still bob my head to this day. Like it's, Crash Man, Airman, even just like the first stage of the Wily levels. Like that soundtrack hits. You obviously play as Mega Man in your never-ending quest to defeat Dr. Wily, and he always has new 8 robots to challenge you. I mean, it had some of the wildest challenging platforming that really tested your patience and your ability to push on. It was hard enough for me to make me mad as hell sometimes. Sometimes I'm like, how can this be so hard? But it was fun enough for me to keep going. I claim to this day that the reason why I'm so patient with things in my life now is mostly due to Mega Man games, playing Mega Man games growing up. So yeah, most people don't understand what a Mega Man game is, but if you know, you know. It was tough, actually, to pick my favorite Mega Man game. A lot of the games are good. A lot of people that have played the original Mega Man games, a lot of times they say Mega Man 3 is the superior one, which I wouldn't argue that because, comparing games and ranking games is really a subjective opinion. And it's like, hey, wow, you think Mega Man 3 is better? That's cool. I mean, I don't care. Mega Man 3 is a great game. But this one stands out since it was the first video game I truly loved as a kid. I truly fell in love with this game to where it's like, to me, it was like a 10 out of 10 game at this time. There was nothing that the game did that I didn't like. So, nostalgia tinted glasses all the way. So I bet you're wondering if they're any good, if there are going to be any Legend of Zelda games in this list. I mean, if you know me, I have a tattoo of a Triforce on my left forearm, so one's got to be on here, right? And it is, of course, without a doubt, Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. I didn't buy this game till much later after its release in 1991, but at this time I was renting the SNES, and every time I rented the SNES at Blockbuster, I always rented this game. The first feeling you get when you fire up the game, if you were there, you'll know the feeling you get. You fire up the game, you step out of your house, it's pouring rain. You're hearing the sound effects of the rain just like falling, and hearing some of the most iconic music in the series that the series has ever produced pumping through your speakers, or your TV speakers at this time. I was hooked right from the get-go. Especially, your first objective is, go rescue Princess Zelda from captivity. Like, crazy. You watch your uncle leave the house, and then you're like, where are you going? And then you chase after him. The stakes were unbelievably high in this game, with Aghanim as the main villain. And, is it really Aghanim? Is he really who he says he is? He's trying to pull the Dark World into the current world and become the ruler of both with the powers of the Triforce. It was so cool because there was like two Hyrules that you were playing in this game, the Dark World and the Light World. So it was like you were almost playing like two whole games. It was crazy when you finished the Light World sequence, and you think you've beaten the game, and then all of a sudden you get transported to a whole nother world. So many like holy crap moments in this game where it's like there's a whole nother world in this game. Crazy. Link's job obviously is to scour the Dark World and become powerful enough to take them on and save the Light World from demonic forces. I could say, instead of Illusion of Gaia, actually, that this game really was my first RPG game I've ever played. And RPG is almost kind of subjective. Sometimes I think nowadays RPG is more of a game mechanic as opposed to a genre, because there's so many role-playing game elements in video games nowadays. It's like, technically racing games are RPGs. But the story and the setting for Link to the Past was so iconic for me that I didn't even consider this game to be an RPG in the traditional sense. I was captivated by the world setting, the adventure, combat, and weapons and items at your disposal. The sprawling map, the two maps you could access and plot your next move, just, accessing those maps, and it's like, okay, I got to go there, and I got to follow this path. It was so cool. To this day, this is my favorite Legend of Zelda game of all time. I don't think anything's going to beat this one. Not knocking. There's a lot of good Zelda games that have come out after this. Ocarina of Time. I'm a big fan of the Twilight Princess. Breath of the Wild was really good. Like, I'm not knocking any of them. They're all good games, and some of my favorite Zelda games I just listed. But Link to the Past will always be my favorite. Almost there. Next, I get to talk about Shinobi 3. And this was a tough one because besides the Ninja Gaiden series, which I adore as well, no other ninja game made me feel as powerful as this one. Controlling Joe Musashi as he fights against the criminal syndicate Neo Zeed in the modern era. I, was a big fan of Ninja Gaiden 2. Ninja Gaiden 3 was okay. Like, I played Ninja Gaiden 2 more than anything. And if I needed to rank my favorite one, I think you've heard me talk about this in my Ninja Gaiden episodes. Ninja Gaiden 2 was my favorite out of all of them. I think the story, the music, the levels, the level design was just great. Hard as hell. And Shinobi 3 was a little bit easier, but not that much easier. This game came out in 1993 in the Sega Genesis, and many people nowadays, maybe pick it up and lament how hard it is. I played this so much as a kid that I don't even think of its difficulty at all. It's just I kind of have that muscle memory, and I just know. With the exception of obviously one of the later levels in the mansion, if you know, you know. It had some of the most epic boss battles, amazing graphics, and another banging soundtrack that is both frenetic and epic. The game's soundtrack was so good, I would actually fire up my Genesis and just play the soundtrack in the background in the options menu. When games had music test options and you could just listen to the music. I actually did the same with Streets of Rage 2. I did that with a lot of games. Like, it was so cool to just like fire up the game, go to the options menu, and just sit there and listen to the music. It was so cool. Controlling Joe was smooth, fast, powerful. You were running through levels, dispatching foes with your primary weapon was the Shuriken, and you can upgrade the Shuriken to be like more powerful. You can do jump kicks, sword attacks. I mean, all manner of different attacks. I enjoy going back to play this game, and still amazed at how much muscle memory I have intact with this game. It's wild. Last but not least, Silent Hill 2. To this day, no game has ever affected me the way Silent Hill 2 has. By the end of the game, I was so bamboozled to the point where I looked back throughout my gameplay. I just felt tricked throughout the whole game. Like, if you've played this game, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. And I'll talk more about the story and the game's events later, but when this game came out for the PlayStation 2 in 2001, I knew then and there that this would be one of my favorite games of all times for future years. I was that convinced. The main character in the story, James, ventures into Silent Hill to look for his wife, who he presumed was dead, died of this damn disease, he says in the game, and only finds a derelict town and monsters everywhere. The journey is pretty damn arduous, pretty damn terrifying, and it'll leave you shaken to your core by the end of it. So many scary moments in this game and unsettling moments. It really pushed the boundaries of storytelling in video games, honestly. And despite being a native Japanese game, you can always not necessarily count on good Japanese to English translation, but this had some great English voice acting. It really did. I was happy to have gotten a remake of this game in 2024, although I honestly say we didn't really need one since the original was still great. But obviously, some games need to be modernized for modern audiences, and the remake was great. It was a good, faithful recreation, and you can tell it was made by fans of the original, people that actually adored the original one and wanted to keep a lot of it together while modernizing it a little bit. This game also had a great, eerie, atmospheric, and horror-like soundtrack. I think I bought the CD soundtrack when this game came out, and I would listen to it on my car rides or something like that. It was pretty cool. So that's my top 10. Like I said at the start of this episode, none of this was any particular order, with the exception of one being my favorite of all time, but I'll obviously share that later. And I gotta say, this was really hard. This was really hard to make a top 10 list. And I enjoy a wide variety of games. If you go to my YouTube channel, you can see the game collection I have. And the majority of those games, I would say 80% of those games I've played before and I've logged in a lot of time with, either when I was a kid or playing it at other people's houses, or even just like picking it up and playing them on my own. So it was hard to kind of go through a majority of that collection and picking 10 of my favorite ones. And other games I enjoy massively didn't really make this list. I think I was juggling with Star Fox 64, Ninja Gaiden 2, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Final Fantasy 7, Metal Gear Solid 2, so many other different ones. It was tough, but I would say that these 10 games were definitely a product of their time, and the difference would not necessarily, it wouldn't be like that these were technical marvels or like 10 out of 10 games by reviewers or magazine articles or massively well known amongst everybody. But they were a product of their time, and I played them at key points in my life that really helped boost them to resonate with me on a massive level and helped elevate them to this list. And when I talk about each game, I'll obviously share a little bit of that when I do the deep dives in future episodes. So I'll talk about, like, why did Illusion of Gaia resonate with me so much this time? Why did Mega Man 2 resonate with me so much at that time? And that has a lot to do with how we consume content and how we feel nostalgic about things. Like, you can kind of listen to a song and say, oh yeah, I remember that when I was younger, but like, what was your life? Where was your life at that time when you were listening to that song? And those memories will flood back, as opposed to just the song making you feel that. So, this is a retro podcast, so obviously we have to talk about nostalgia. But that about wraps it up in this episode. Be sure to follow me on my socials on X, Threads, and Instagram at RetroX Podcast. Whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on, be sure to follow and enable notifications so you can find out when I drop a new episode. Episodes are also live on YouTube, and follow me there as well at Retro X Podcast. I also want to thank the Hair of the Dogcast Network for allowing me in their group of shows, and consider joining the Patreon at patreon.com/Hair of the Dogcast and join the community where you can get early access and exclusive episodes every week. Thanks for listening, guys. Yeah, this is one of my shortest episodes.